Bună seara! Bine ați venit la cea de-a doua seară FILIT, întâlnirea cu scriitorul american Richard Ford, aici, pe scena Teatrului Național Vasile Alexandrii din Iași. La Iași, la FILIT, în octombrie, n-am prea avut parte de clima asta răcoros-musonică. S-a întâmplat. Sperăm că timpul o să țină cu noi, cum se spune în presă, în zilele ce vin. A mai rămas un weekend de care să ne bucurăm. Asta nu e impediment să nu ieșim din casă. Doamnelor și domnilor, bună seara, bine ați venit! FILIT este un proiect ce reunește în România sute de profesioniști din domeniul cultural. Scriitori, traducători, editori, organizatori de festival, critici literari, librari, distribuitori de carte, manageri și jurnaliști culturali. Anul acesta, în ediția a 7-a Festivalului Internațional de Literatură și Traducere, avem 300 de invitați în peste 100 de evenimente. FILIT este un proiect finanțat, după cum știți, de Consiliul Județean Iași prin Muzeul Național al Literaturii Române, filiala Iași. Ediția de anul acesta se bucură de înaltul patronaj al reprezentanței Comisiei Europene în România, cu sprijinul Primăriei Municipiului Iași, Inspectoratului Școlar Județean Iași și Asociației Patrimoniu pentru Comunitate. Partenerii principali sunt BCR, SCC și Cotnari. Partenerii care fac ca FILIT-ul să existe sunt Palace Mall, Aqua Carpatica, Biblioteca Județeană Gheorghe Asachi, Caravana Gaudeamus, Radio România, Mob Expert, Nescafe, Arcadia, Cărturești, Palatul Copiilor Iași, Alecart, Clubul Logos, Rise Up, Ambasada Regatului Țărilor de Jos în România, Centrul Cultural German Iași, Institutul Francez, Wallonie Bruxelles Internațional, Arca lui Gutenberg, Librarium, Memorialul Ipotești, Complexul Muzeal Național Moldova Iași, Setcom Libris, Societatea de Concerte Bistrița, Universitatea Alexandru Ioan Cuza din Iași, Biblioteca Centrală Mihai Eminescu Iași, Fundația Friends for Friends, Mamprenoare, Storia Books, Sfatul Mamei și Serusii Iași. Editurile partenere ale FILIT, ediția a 7-a 2019, sunt Polirom, Nemira, Cartier, Black Button Books, Artur, Humanitas, Curtea Veche, Cartea Românească, Casa Cărții de Știință, Editura Tracus Arte, Paralela 45, Editura Școala Ardeleană, Casa de Editură Max Blecher și Velant. Localurile partenere, foarte importante pentru FILIT, Acaju, Fica, Iasiro, B2, Bindu, Bistro la Noi, Cafeneaua Noastră, Cafeneaua Veche, Ce-ar fi să, Cuib, Dopopoco, Petru, La Bază, Oditi, Birzon, Retro Cafe, Halafix, Teos Cafe, Trumpets, Traz și Nu. Iar partenerii media sunt Suplimentul de Cultură, Curie Internațional, RFI România, Scena Nouă, Radio România Cultural, TVR Iași, Observator Cultural și Radio Hit. Toți merită aplauzele noastre. Mulțumesc! Și vă mulțumim! Invitatul acestei a doua seri FILIT este, așa cum deja știți, scriitorul american Richard Ford, unul dintre cei mai mari romancieri americani contemporani, născut în 1944 în Jackson, Mississippi. După o tinerețe agitată în care a fost asistent de mecanic de locomotivă, a studiat management hotelier, literatură engleză și drept, a antrenat o echipă de baseball la o școală din Michigan, s-a înscris în Marina Americană, de unde a fost trimis acasă bolnav de hepatită, a fost profesor în Arkansas, s-a mutat la New York în 1968 odată cu căsătoria și a devenit editor la o revistă. Așa s-a decis în sfârșit să devină scriitor. Este unul dintre marii maestri ai prozei americane, creator al curentului literar realism murdar, dirty realism. Raymond Carver a spus despre el că Richard Ford este un maestru al romanului. În 1995, cariera lui Ford își atinge punctul culminant cu Independence Day, câștigător al premiului PEN Faulkner și al premiului Pulitzer pentru ficțiune, urmat în 2001 de PEN Malamud Award pentru excelență în proza scurtă. Tradus în română la editura Humanitas de Iulia Gorzo, acest celebru roman este urmarea cronicarului sportiv, apărut tot la Humanitas în traducerea Iuliei Negrea. Fanii lui Ford din România încă așteaptă ultimul volum al acestei trilogii, The Lay of the Land, aflat în pregătire în colecția Raftul Denisei. Richard Ford este un scriitor foarte original, cum sunt toți scriitorii, și foarte temperamental. Se spune despre el că i-a trimis unei scriitoare o carte de-a ei cu o gaură de glonte în urma unei cronici negative la unul din romanele sale. Este și autorul mai multor povestiri de succes, la fel premiate, între care Femei cu bărbați și Rock Springs sunt ambele traduse în limba română. Una la editura Avelant, de Vali Florescu, iar a doua, Rock Springs, apărută la editura Black Button Books în 2017, a fost tradusă chiar de Marius Chivu, criticul literar și scriitorul care va fi gazda acestei serii. Marius e un bun cunoscător al prozei lui Richard Ford și chiar mărturisește într-un interviu că, într-o anumită măsură, a fost influențat în scrierile sale de Richard Ford. Discuția acestei serii va fi în limba engleză cu traducere simultană în căști. Doamnelor și domnilor, îl invit în fața dumneavoastră pe câștigătorul Premiului Pulitzer, scriitorul american Richard Ford. Gazda acestei seri, Marius Chivu.
My chair's not big enough.
Good evening, and happy birthday, Robbie Sherban. Oh boy, Richard, I've been waiting for such a long time for you to come in Romania, just like my grandfather waited for the Americans.
Well,
after the Second World War.
At least I came. Yeah, don't hold your breath. And by the way, what a wonderful place you have here. What a wonderful room this is.
Richard, let's begin with the beginning. As a kid, you were mildly dyslexic.
Yes.
Right?
And as an adult, I'm still mildly dyslexic.
Good for you. You're a slow reader.
Yes, I am.
Perfect. You once told in an interview that you...
Again, I'm going to get a little... You're going to talk at this sort of sexy voice. I'm going to have to get a little closer to you.
Your first book, yeah, you didn't read it up until you finished high school, yeah? Is that right?
I was 19. I was 19. I mean, I you know, I read kids' books that you could read, you know, Freddie the Pig. But a first serious book that I ever read was when I was 19. Yeah, we didn't have a household in which reading was a high priority. My father never read a book that I ever saw. And my mother read bestsellers. Probably she didn't think I was interested in reading them, and I wasn't interested in reading them. So she just depended on school to teach me to read. And I was slow, very slow. So, and it wasn't, I didn't grow up in a household in which people were constantly beating me to go to, you know, do better in school. They just thought, well, if you're in school and you're getting along, that's enough, that's fine.
And after your father died, you went to a strange period when you break into houses, you steal cars, guns, safes from magazines.
Yeah. Well, I did that before he died, too.
I hope you're not doing it right now.
I'm not doing it at the moment.
But
no.
don't you feel the need sometimes?
You know, I do. I hardly ever go into a pharmacy in the United States without feeling that sort of itch to steal something. But Christina has told me that the technology is so far ahead of me now that the old way in which you could go into a place and steal something just to see if you could get away with it, you know, it doesn't work anymore. So at age 75, I've given that up.
So the idea of this introduction is that it's a strange beginning for a writer, right?
I don't know about it. What's normal?
What were the odds of you becoming a writer, you know, being dyslexic and, you know,
Zero. Zero. I mean, there was no reason to think that I was going to be a writer. I think probably, this is one of the things that I learned when I was 16 and 17. I think my father's death was the freeing act in my life, which made the world seem more open to me. It's just sad and tragic that he lost his life at the age he did, 55 years old, and that was something which had a somewhat, not entirely at all, but had a freeing effect on me. So you learn something when you're a kid and your father dies in your arms, and your mother is, you know, lost in a way, and that it has a kind of unexpected good effect on you. Those kinds of little collisions of logic and sentiment are very instructive. In other words, that the conventional way that you feel, or you're supposed to feel about the death of your father, is actually really somewhat contrary to the way that you do feel. I mean, I was very sorry to lose my father. I loved my father very much. My mother loved my father immoderately. But for me, it was just a mixed grievance in a way.
I don't want to sound like Oprah, but isn't it strange that you owe
Oprah's from Mississippi, just like I am, so you can sound like Oprah.
Isn't it strange that somehow right now you owe everything you are and everything people know about you to your father's premature passing away?
Well, that's a little too simplistic, because I owe most of the things that I have done in my life to my wife, who freed me more than anything freed me to pursue what I thought I could pursue, because I mean, my father's death was just a chance event, and I reacted in the way that I reacted, but Christina's freeing me was right out of her character, right out of her nature, so that was much more significant to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, in your memoir, Between Them, you talk about your parents like a really nice couple that loved each other, that spent a lot of time together. Actually, they travel a lot.
Yes.
They partied, and
yes.
You come really late after they got engaged and married.
Yes, 15 years after they were married. They only had one child, and I was it after 15 years of marriage.
Hence the title, Between Them. You felt like the kid you were, it was just something that separated them.
Well, it was a great deal more than something that separated them. It also joined them in a whole new way. I mean, truthfully, they wanted a child very, very, very much. And even though I came physically from their union, and also I was a child who was cared for by both of them at the same time, it also, as children do, inevitably made them separate a little bit. Not profoundly, but just a little bit. And it wasn't... It wasn't troublesome to me, and indeed, what I realized was, over the course of the 16 years that I was their child before my father died, I realized that my parents' first love was each other, and that I was third among the three of us. And I found that to be an extremely freeing and comforting fact. I mean, I wasn't a child who came literally between my parents so as to cause them to be separated forever. They were never separated, really.
Did you ever cross your mind that your relationship with Christina somehow resembles your parents had, the closeness, the long-time relationship, and...
Did I ever wonder, did I ever question it? Why their union was so tight?
And if your relationship right now is the kind of relationship that probably your parents had or wanted to have, without kids and being together, you know, on their own, traveling just like you are traveling because you don't have a house
or children. Yeah. I mean, I always thought that marriage was forever. That's what I always thought, and so that's the way I've always wanted to make it be forever, yeah. That's the way their life was. I mean, that's not a template for my life, but my understanding of marriage was not as it wasn't a rule, it wasn't the law, it was just that that's the way I saw being in love, which was that it would last forever.
Well, obviously, Christina is your last love, but was she the first one?
That's a very personal question. Yes.
Well, your memoir, Between Them, consists in 2 essays written 30 years apart. The one about your mother, written 5 years after her death.
Yes.
But the other one about your father, 56 years later, after he died. What was the hardest part of writing about your father at after such a long time?
I'm going to tell you a secret, okay? There's nothing hard about writing. Any writer who tells you how hard he or she works, you have to grab your wallet. Because if it were this hard, I wouldn't be doing it. If it were this hard, I couldn't be doing it. It was actually a joy and a relief and a great freedom to write about my father. It was just that because he died when I was 16 and was never in my life the way fully present that my mother was, it took me a long time, all those years, to accumulate raw material and raw memories and to think about how, in fact, to frame the story I would tell about his life. But it was never hard. It was always something I wanted to do. It was always something I thought that were I to get around to doing it, could do very well. So it was great to be able to do it, and it was great to be able to memorialize this man who life did not memorialize, and to make the fact that he was a rather ordinary, unmemorable man a subject of literature. I mean, that's what for me, writing imaginative literature or writing a memoir allows me to do, which is to say to a readership, look at this. You haven't seen this before. No one's told you that this is important. You see it every day. Look at it more closely. You might see that it's more important than you think it is, and therefore you might think that your own life is actually more important than you thought it was.
What was the most unexpected thing for you, writing or putting this book together? Was something that surprised you?
Well, I don't know if it surprised me. What I said to you before, Marius, about realizing that my parents loved each other in a way that made me third. I had never said that before, and I don't think I had ever thought that before. But somehow in writing about them at the same time and going back and forth, I realized that that was true because of the way I felt about them both. I mean, I have grown up with no resentment toward my parents, with no reluctance toward my parents, with no wishes that they be different or any complaints about my parents at all. And I realized that was because I knew where I belonged amongst the three of us. So that was important to me to be able to understand. Sometimes, it's just the nature of contemporary life. Somebody will say to me, "You had a very happy childhood, didn't you?" And I say, "Yes, I'd had a very happy childhood." And I think to myself, I wonder if I did. I wonder if I suppressed a horrible memory someplace that I will someday, but I'm getting so old now, it's too late. So no, there aren't any horrible memories that I suppressed because I have gone through my life with a rake and looked at everything about my parents.
On a funny note about this memoir, I have a friend, really good reader, and he said to me, probably Ford saw, all the memoirs that are being written right now all over the world, and he said, "Listen, I'm going to show you how it's done."
Rubbish, because that's not true at all, because that would mean that writing was a competitive sport.
And it isn't?
No, it's not a competitive sport at all. First of all, I don't know about those other memoirs. And second of all, my belief is that when one of my colleagues does well in the world, I am better for it. When someone succeeds, when someone writes something wonderful, then everybody is made better for it. So I never take pleasure when I do well versus someone else. I never feel bad when someone does well and I do not. It's just it's just ingrained in me. That's not the way to behave.
Well, your first translation in Romanian was The Sports Writer.
Yes.
Yeah. When you wrote the first Frank Bascom book, after being yourself for a short writer, a sports writer for the Sports Illustrated.
Yes.
Did you ever think it would become a tetralogy?
No.
Did you see it coming? Did you want it to write another great American novel?
No. I thought that The Sports Writer was one book, and it was a kind of a life-saving book for me because I had written 2 other books that nobody had read. And so
except Ray Carver.
He read it because I made him read it. And I'm not sure he liked it, but he told me he liked it. But on that third book, which was The Sports Writer, my agent said to me, she said, Ford, she said, if this book that you're writing doesn't make a big success, you're finished. You're done. So I thought, oh, okay. So I worked, harder on that than anything I'd ever worked on up to then. But I only thought it was one book. And I never thought it would have any affiliations with or be predictive of any other books at all. And even though these books now, there are 4 of them and maybe there's soon going to be 5, even though these books are still joined, I still think of them as one book at a time. I don't think I'm filling out some long-ranged plan. I'm still just a kind of a one book at a time kind of writer because I don't want to be distracted by something beyond this. I want to be present. I mean, to be a novelist, to be a writer is to be extremely present and not thinking about what's to the side or not thinking about what's to the back or what's to the forward, just to be present. And that's hard. That's enough.
I wanted to ask you about why is it that you take such a long time, writing a new book?
Well, first of all, because I have nothing else to do. And second of all, that's just how my brain works. I am dyslexic. I'm a slow thinker. I just think that I'm better off taking as much time as I need to take rather than fulfilling some quota or rather than abiding by some publisher's schedule. The world doesn't need a lot of books from me. The world just needs a few good books from me. So however I can do that, that's my highest priority. That's my highest value. When I do things hastily, and this is for those, if there are any students here, when you do things hastily, usually you don't do them very well. So I never do things hastily. I'm slow at everything.
So this 5th book of Frank Bascom, is it going to be in the age of Trump?
I'm afraid it is, and it's very hard. It's very hard to write the words Donald Trump onto a page without feeling that you're sinking your whole book into a morass, So there will probably be some ingenious strategy, which is true about most Americans' lives now. We don't like to say his name very much. It hurts. Something hurts when you say his name. So I'll find some way to have that man be in the book in some way without having to say his name a lot. It's an ugly name anyway.
Is it true that you were about to punch an old man just for having a sticker with Trump on his car?
No. What? No. It's crap like this just gets made up. No.
I know even the made-up things about you.
Yeah, even the made-up. No, I wouldn't do that. I mean, this is in our country. People can put anything that they want on their cars without having to fear someone like me coming along and punching them. I wouldn't consider that. Because if I did, I'd be punching people all the time because there would be a lot of people who put Trump stickers on their cars. I think to myself, oh, Christ, I wish I didn't have to see that, but I do, because it's a free country. So even the idiots get to vote.
Here the idiots are ruling the country, so.
Say?
Here the idiots are the government itself, so.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure you all love your country, and I love my country, but we're not always happy with who's leading our country. And all that means is that the rest of us who love our country, we just have to try a little harder.
Listen, Frank Bascom was always put in the same league of great American novel characters, together with John Updike's Rabbit Angstrom or Philip Roth's Nathan Zuckerman. If you have to rank these three characters in order of their literary greatness, who would be on the first place and who would be on the third?
Well, actually, I don't have to do that, and so I won't. but I would probably put myself third, just to be polite. But you know, I never met Mr. Roth, but I knew John Updike pretty well, and so they're human beings. I mean, they're not icons to me. They're actual human beings, and so they, in writing those books, they did the absolute best that they could do. So again, there's no competition between them and me. I was able to tell John Updike that I only know one of those books very, very well. The other three I don't know very, very well. But I was able to tell him in my life that that book, Rabbit is Rich, meant a lot to me. I was able to tell him that if he hadn't had the imagination that he had to connect all these four books, it might not have ever occurred to me to connect these books, because I didn't have that kind of ambition at first. And so for me, it meant more to me to tell John Updike that I respected him and liked him than it meant to me to think my book's better than yours. I don't think that way. I never think my book is better than somebody else's book.
And it's hard to compete one each other because they're placed in different periods of times, written in different languages.
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't compete with other writers. There's just no moment when you can win or lose. Your best hope is to do the best you can. And I know it sounds sappy to say this, but it's just true.
At some point, there was this idea of a HBO miniseries of Frank Bascom. What happened?
They paid me a lot of money. That's one of the things that happened. And as far as I was concerned, that's all they needed to do. And they paid me a lot of money for 5 years. And then at the end, they said, nope, we're not going to do it. I said, thank you very much. Because, you know, first prize is they don't make your movie, and second prize is they do.
But you enjoy Wildlife, the movie that Paul Dano made last year about your novel.
I did like it. I thought it was scrupulous, and I thought it was very much Paul Dano's movie. It was not much of an adaptation of my book. When he and I met each other, which was not very often, but we met each other once, and I told him, I said, you're going to buy my book, and I'm really glad, but I want to make sure that you understand, my book is my book. Nothing will ever violate my book. So you take my book, and you make of it whatever you'd like to make. If you want to only use the title, if you only want to use one scene, or if you want to use no scenes, just make the best movie you can possibly make. And I think he liked that. No director wants to be shadowed by the author or be sort of inhibited by the author in some way. And I was very clear. All I was in it for was the money. And once they paid me the money, I was good. And I know that if that sounds cynical, it's not. It's just practical.
How good were the money?
How good is the money? Not as good as you think. It used to be better, whereas it used to be pretty good back in the 70s and 80s. Now it's a little book like my book, Wildlife, which is published by black button books in this very country, a little book like mine can only be produced by an independent producer in an independent project. So that means they have to go scraping around after money. When I worked for Paramount in the 70s, there was always a lot of money and everybody got paid a lot. But now, since the studio system is so impoverished and they only want to make these big space movies and stupid movies, books like mine have a very low budget, so I don't get paid as much. It's okay, I mean, they get paid some.
Can you tell the audience what movie did you see yesterday night?
Oh yeah, Christina and I got into town last night and we were very tired, so we watched Groundhog Day on television. It was an odd way to come to Romania, but we were just kind of tired and sort of dopey, and so we watched Groundhog Day, which we'd never seen before. It was vaguely amusing. We couldn't understand why it's this cult classic that it is. It just didn't make any sense to us.
What part of the work for a book you enjoy the most?
I like being in the middle of books the most. I like it when you can't remember the beginning and you haven't gotten to the end yet, because then you have those moments when you can be completely present, when you know that everything you do has an opportunity to make the book better. There is a kind of, at the beginning of writing a novel, when you're writing the first sentence and the first paragraph, there's a kind of a precipice feeling that you better get this right, you better get this right. And then you get to the end, and the other end, 2 or 3 years later, 200,000 words later, you think to yourself, oh my God, I have one chance to get this right. But when you're in the middle, you have hundreds of chances to make things right. And it's the time in life when you feel most like a novelist, that you're in it, you're totally immersed. Things that you do can make things better. And so for me, it's as close to writing it's as close to the way in which writing a novel can seem like an alternate existence. And I like that, yeah.
How do you approach a subject or an idea? Do you know from the very beginning that it's going to be a short story or a novel? Do you discover the way that develop the story, or do you already have it in your mind?
Well, I just make a sort of decision based on how much energy I feel like I have. If I feel like I've got 3 years worth of energy, then I'm going to write a novel. If I feel like I have a month's worth of energy, then I'm going to write a short story. So those kinds of decisions, and they're quite arbitrary, get made right at the beginning and before I ever try to write. Because I think it's useful to know what it is you're going to do before you do it. But as far as discovering my way, I accumulate, for writing a novel, I accumulate an immense amount of raw material which comes out of my notebook, which I carry around with me all the time, and just in case something...
Let me keep that for you.
You can have that. Oh, you want that? You can have that. That's fine. That'll cost you a lot of money, but it's all right. But
we'll discuss that in the backstage.
But I accumulate a lot of material, and then at the end of 2 or 3 years of accumulating raw material, I start looking at it and putting things here and putting things there, and assigning certain lines to certain characters and assigning certain lines to certain places. And then over the process of a year of doing that, I get a kind of sense of how the book's going to turn out. I'm a planner by nature, and I like planning. I like to make decisions when not very much rides on it, when it's free. And it's just, it's totally idiosyncratic and subjective. I don't advertise this as a way people should write novels. People should write novels the way they can write novels. There's no one way to do it. My way is rather onerous and clerically difficult for me, but it's okay. It works, here it is, it works.
After your breakthrough with The Sports Writer, you published Rock Springs, who eventually became a widely acclaimed book. But coming with short stories after a major novel, that was, to me, a great a sign of a great belief in the art of the short story.
Yes. I thought it was too, for myself, that that I found out how to write short stories. All of my friends were short story writers. Raymond Carver, Tobias Wolff, Ann Beattie, Joy Williams, Tim O'Brien. These were all my pals. And they were writing these stories which were so good, and they made writing short stories seem easy. And I had never found short stories to be easy. I found them to be slightly bewildering, and had never written any good ones. But the thing that mattered to me was that when, this was at the time in America when there were people asking you to read things in public, and Ray and Toby and all these people always had a story ready to read in public. And I thought, damn, I need some stories to read in public. So I got busy learning how to write short stories so I could have something to read in public. And it wasn't, you know, like most artistic decisions, they start with a rather practical rationale. And for me, that was the practical rationale, so that I wouldn't be the guy sitting on the other end of the couch without a short story to read. So that's why I did it. But when I was writing Rock Springs, I wrote Rock Springs at the same time that I wrote The Sports Writer. Whenever I would go 6 months and write The Sports Writer along, then I would get tired or bored or lose interest, and then I'd write a story. And so at the end of 4 years, I had a book of stories and a novel at the same time. And I've done that always.
And this is strange because these two books, The Sports Writer and The Rock Springs, they're
nothing alike.
Exactly.
They're nothing
totally
alike.
different books.
Well, you know, Marius, we all of us have in ourselves different voices. And one of the things that writers do is that we capitalize on the different voices that we have in ourselves. You know, we have a different voice that we speak to our priest with, if we have a priest. We have a different voice that we speak to our teachers with. We have voices and different rhetorics and different vocabularies and different rhetorical ends to be served with the different voices that we have. Writers just have a use for those voices. And I had a voice which I didn't know I had, which was appropriate to tell this story about this man who's a sports writer in New Jersey. But I also had a voice which was appropriate to people who worked on the railroad in Montana in the 1960s. It didn't surprise me. What mostly surprised me was that I had a use for it. But I knew, I mean, I'm just a person who can mimic people. I can imitate people. It's just always something I did. And so it didn't surprise me to be able to do that.
Speaking of mimicking people...
Give me my notebook back, by the way.
I will.
I know you're going to keep that notebook. Thank you very much.
In this light, you know, you look like a bit like young Clint Eastwood.
A young Clint Eastwood. That's nice. I'd rather be a rich Clint Eastwood.
All three short stories books of yours, the thing that I like the most is that they're not just collections of short pieces, you know, gathered together, but they share the same theme, the same, I don't know, atmosphere, language, characters. Anyway,
it's true. I've tried to make books of short stories be integrated in a way. Yes.
Is it going to be the same with your forthcoming short story book?
Yes.
Sorry for Your Trouble.
Yes, it is. These are stories, 11 stories, which have a kind of underlying Irish preoccupation. In my family, particularly on my father's side, some on my mother's side, were Irish. And I have been going, Christina and I have been going to Ireland quite a lot in the past 20 years. And I realized I was just accumulating a sense of language and accumulating a sense of experience. And I was also noticing how many Irish people had matriculated into American life and were not notably visible as Irish people or as people of Irish heritage. And so I thought, well, I'll write about people who would otherwise not be noticeable. That for me is always a motive to write things, to draw a reader's attention to something that was, as de Kooning says, so well known as not to be noticed. And I want to use what I can with stories to draw someone's attention to something that they might have seen but didn't notice. And that was about Irish people in America. And I don't have any theories about Irish people in America, but it's an immigrant's book. It's a book about immigrants, and long before immigration became the hot issue that it is in America now, and probably in Europe now, immigration is a huge issue. It was just something that I got kind of sublimely interested in without a goal, but just to, you write stories and what you think to yourself, here's something I want to write about. I wonder what I can make myself say. And so about these Irish people, I thought, I wonder what I can make myself say without having a plan.
I was once asking you what's the main difference between the short story and a novel, and you said to me, the length. And I was somehow disappointed, but then I thought, wow, well, maybe he meant that they share the same complexity, no matter the length. And after that, I read in an interview that you said the novel is such a forgiving form, comparing to the short story, when so many people can go wrong.
Yes. Well, in the most simplistic way, a novel has so many words in it, 200,000 words maybe, 150,000 words. There's so many ways to go right. But in a short story, which maybe has 5,000 words in it or 6,000 words, it turns out that there's so many ways to go wrong. And so when you go wrong in a short story, if you make the action go in a different direction, or if you make someone say the wrong thing, the balance in a short story is quite delicate and almost precarious. Whereas a novel has so many formal parts, has characters, it has lots of words, it has a lot of scenes, it has a lot of settings, it has the whole apparatus of how it's told, the point of view. There's so many ways to make up for a blemish in a novel with some other formal feature that is not quite as available to you in a short story, which has a number of formal features, but they're all highlighted. You see everything in a short story. You see all the bones of the story all the time. And the sense that everything has to be in rather almost perfect balance is at least it's something that I observe. I mean, maybe, you get another writer to sit on this couch and he or she might say something different. Fortunately, there are no rules to this. There's a great line of Somerset Maugham. Mom said, there are 3 rules for writing a novel.
Nobody knows them.
Yeah, but unfortunately, no one knows what they are. And that's true. You have to make it up anew every time.
Reading your books, I always had this idea that a small novel like Wildlife, but also the big one like Canada, share the same narrative DNA as the stories in Rock Springs.
Perfectly true.
What made you think that the idea in Wildlife and the other one in Canada should be, developed as a long novel,
really,
not just a story?
Marius, it was totally instinctual. I don't have a theory about this. I have this facility to tell stories in the voice and through the agent character of a 16-year-old adolescent. And I guess I just hadn't told as much as I could tell by then. And I had more with that voice that I could do. I think I've maybe exhausted it now, but I had more to do. I just felt this kind of, what Catherine Ann Porter calls a commotion in my heart and in my brain, to do it again. Try this again. Try to make it better. Try to make it wider. Try to make it more intelligent. And that's all you've got. And so I don't want to come to the end of my life and have anything left over. I want it all to be used up. And that's the way I use it up. I just use it up by writing it. It won't do me any good if there's a lot of stories left untold. When Updike died, speaking of Updike as we were, when he died, there was a sort of an appreciation of Updike written in the New Yorker magazine by a man named Adam Gopnik. And Gopnik said about Updike that he became, through the agency of being a writer, he became fully expressed. And that didn't mean that he wrote about himself, because writing is not really self-expression, it's using yourself for something. But Updike didn't leave anything undone. And that's kind of my goal. Don't leave anything undone.
All of your books are built around disasters.
I never thought of that.
Well, think about it.
Okay.
Failed marriage, bad luck, infidelity, breakups, death of a child, separation of parents, a natural catastrophic like in Katrina, in Let Me Be Frank with You.
Yeah, nobody goes to buy ice cream? I never thought of that. It's interesting. Well, you're looking for drama, you know. Whenever you're looking for drama, you're looking in a certain part of your life. But I would say this in defense of myself, as somebody who trades in disaster, to be able to tell those stories is a kind of document which attests to those stories being able to be survived. If a person, a character, tells his or her own story about something terrible that happened, the ability to tell it is the proof that these disasters can somehow be lived beyond. And that telling is always a kind of a testimony to your success, your rational success over the disaster itself. So even though the subject matter may be dark or dour or morose even, or disastrous, telling is the cure, in a sense. I used to always say, if loneliness is the disease, the story is the cure. So that's sort of how I believe.
But does this preoccupation of yours with dark subjects and helplessness situations, they got anything to do with your, I don't know, inner fears or something like that? Because it seems to me that after the age of 16, you kind of had a good life.
I did. I've had a great life. Married the girl I loved. Didn't have any children. It's wonderful. I don't know. I mean, that seems to be too severe a rationale for me. I mean, at my age, I'm not particularly fearful of death, because I've seen death up close a lot of times. It must have something to do with my inner fears, but I don't know what. I mean, there has to be something about writing that you can't explain. Everything can't finally be rationalized out of existence, or you wouldn't do it. There has to be something about yourself that is slightly mysterious, and that you can't just reduce down to one answer. And I don't even like that very much, because I would like to, in speaking to an audience such as you and to all of you, I would like to make it seem that being a writer is not very hard, and that I'm an ordinary kind of a Joe, and if anybody can do this.
Well, almost anybody can do this. Do you know we have 500,000 authors, active authors right now on the whole planet? 500,000, can you imagine?
Well, it's a victimless crime. No one's harmed if you write a bad story. It doesn't do anybody any trouble if you have 500,000 writers and not many of them are writing very well. No one's harmed by that. It's okay with me.
Those stories in Rock Springs and in your novels, sad or really horrible stories.
Well, they're not horrible.
Well,
they're good.
Let the readers judge.
Well, I have to judge first.
Some of them you must have heard or saw when you were living in your grandfather's motel as a teenager.
Yeah, I did grow up in a hotel, a big hotel, like the hotel here at the Grand Hotel, like that. I grew up in a hotel like that. I don't know. I saw a lot of bad and lurid things. There's no doubt about it. I saw death. I saw people do very bizarre things. I saw people carrying pistols. I saw threats. I saw fights. I saw all of that, yeah. But I didn't think when I was seeing these things that it was anything but normal human behavior. Nobody ever said this is lurid or this is louche or this is bizarre. It was just normal. I mean, and I think by and large, myself as a human being, I tend to think that everything is generally pretty normal. It's my way of looking at the world, not to think that everything is bizarre. And I think in telling these stories in Rock Springs, one of the things that I thought was, this is human, this is life, this is human event. So I try to tell it that way.
You know, because you already said several times his name, Ray Carver, I discovered you in this anthology, The Best American Short Stories, 86 edition.
Yeah.
I was in my late 20s when I bought this from Amazon.
Yeah.
It's a second-hand edition. I paid $1.45. And because, of course, I bought it because of Ray Carver's name.
Yes.
But then I discovered your piece, Communist, in here,
Yes.
which it's fun because you once said it's probably your best short story.
I've thought it was a really good short story. I hope I still can write one better than that. But I thought at the time it was probably the best story I had written to date. Yeah.
Anyway, I really felt the commotion, as Catherine Ann Porter said, reading the story. And then, of course, I started looking for your books. Anyway.
Ray liked that. Ray liked that story.
Probably that was the moment that brought you right now here, 13, 15 years later.
My great luck.
In this anthology made by Ray Carver is also selected Tobias Wolff.
Yes.
The three of you were really good friends.
Yes. And we would, Toby and I still are, and we still love Ray. So in a way, we still are great friends.
And the thing is that in a August edition, 1988 of Granta magazine, Ray Carver wrote a beautiful piece around a picture with you, him, and Tobias Wolff somewhere back in London. I can't remember.
At the National Portrait Society of England.
Right. And can I read?
Oh, please, I'd love to hear it.
So, at that time, Ray Carver was already, he had cancer back then.
What year was it?
88, the summer of 88.
He was about to die.
And he says, these three boys, they're having such a good time being together and being themselves, being friends, in short. They'd like things to just go on like this, to last. And they will, up to a point. That point is death, which in the picture is the farthest thing from their minds. But it's something that's never that far away from their thinking when they're alone and not together and having fun as they were that time in London. Things wind down. Things do come to an end. People stop living. Chances are that two of the three friends in this picture will have to gaze upon the remains of the third friend when that time comes. The thought is grievous and terrifying, but the only alternative to burying your friends is that they will have to bury you. And when this piece was in print in August 88,
when he died,
he was already dead by 3 weeks earlier.
Right. He would have much rather that I be dead and that he bury me. I can guarantee you that. And that's not doing him any disservice to say so. When he wrote that, he maybe knew he was very ill, and I'm not quite remembering when he wrote it, but he wanted to live. He wanted to live more than anything in the world. He wanted to live. So he was hoping that he wasn't going to be the one who had to get buried.
I just wanted you to tell the story of you becoming friends, and I don't know, what did you learn from him as a writer, as a man? I know the two of you went go fishing, went to literary festivals.
Yeah. It was, well, I guess the thing that I learned from Ray, although I loved him, I fell in love with him when I met him, and we fell in love with each other. He got very famous after his first book, and then after his second book, he got even more famous. And I was his friend. And I sort of learned from him what it was like to be in the world and be famous. I sort of, not that I ever have been famous like Ray was, but I sort of learned in a sense that it was A, okay, and B, that you could be normal. and that you didn't have to become someone else. You didn't have to suddenly become the famous person. You could just be Ray Carver. You could be somebody's friend, somebody's normal person who puts his shoes on one at a time every day and likes to laugh and go fishing, and I learned that. And I mean, I think I knew it anyway, but to have him there in front of me, being famous and all over the newspapers, was very instructive to me. And he sort of took me along with him. He was a little older than I was, 5, 6 years, 7. And it was a joy, in a way, to have that experience and to see how happy it made him. Some people get famous and they get really unhappy being famous. Well, he never got unhappy being famous. And when I've had good luck in my life, I've never been stupid enough to make it a bad thing. I just think, well, this is great. It won't last long. Be happy.
Speaking of fishing, what other passions do you have that you want to talk about?
Well, I can talk about any of them if you like to. You mean sort of...
What's the story of you becoming a boxer, about your grandfather?
Well, I was getting into a lot of fights because I like to fight, and I have a yap mouth, and so I was getting into a lot of fights, and I wasn't very good at fighting, and so I would come home all beaten up, and my grandfather said to me, you know, this is not good. For you to be beat up, and so he said, we have to take you to the gym at the boys club in Little Rock and have you learn to box with the Golden Gloves team. So I learned to box with the Golden Gloves team in Little Rock, and it worked out okay. It worked out okay. I mean, I still like to box. I still do it. Still work on the speed bag. But I don't get into any fights anymore. I'm a little old for getting into fights. Though I think about it. Sort of like you think about going in that drugstore, you know, and stealing something. I still think about getting into a fight. Why not? It's harmless.
Do you think you would knock out Hemingway if he had gave you a better view?
Well, I don't know. He was kind of a big old fat guy. I probably would. I knew a guy in Toronto back in the 80s named Morley Callahan. And he was a boxer, you know, a pretty good novelist. And he had a boxing match with Hemingway and knocked him down. That was the only good thing he ever really did. But he did that. Could be done.
Did you learn to play guitar? In between them, there's a scene where your father come home with a guitar and offers you a Gibson guitar.
I did. I learned to play guitar. My father, for my 16th birthday, bought me a quite nice guitar, and I started taking lessons right away, and then he died. And my father died a week after my 16th birthday, and I kept that guitar for many years and learned to play it. Yeah, I did. I never learned to play it as well as I should have, but I did learn to play it, yeah.
Is it true that you went to see live Howlin' Wolf?
Oh, absolutely. Howlin' Wolf? Oh, absolutely. When I was a teenager at the University of Mississippi, they used to have these black bands that would come down from Chicago to play in the South. It was called the Chitlin Circuit. And one of those bands was Howlin' Wolf's band, and I was just a 17-year-old teenager, and I met him and sat on his amplifier, and because I didn't know anybody at the party, and he just said, here, sit down on my amplifier, and he would play, and I would sit on his amplifier buzzing like that, you know. Yeah, I did that, yeah.
You're a big fan of Bruce Springsteen.
I am a big fan of Bruce Springsteen, yeah. Christina and I both are big fans of Springsteen, yeah.
I know you review his autobiography.
I did.
How was that book?
That book was very good, and he wrote it himself too. And maybe he had some editorial help, but he wrote it himself, and he sort of laid it all bare, what kind of man he was. And you know, I was happy to say he didn't make himself out to be a better guy than he was. But he, like a lot of people who have a great talent, and he has an immense talent, and he has a huge following. I mean, he has his devils and his demons, and he's perfectly happy to say what they are. He has bipolar disorder and takes medications for it, but that's as bad as it gets.
It's funny that you took the name for your second Frank Bascombe book, Independence Day, from one of his songs about his father.
I did.
And in his autobiography, he really speaks a lot about his family.
Yes.
You were quite interested, I'm imagining, in that part.
Well, his song, Independence Day, I don't know if you know the Springsteen song. It starts off, just say goodbye, it's Independence Day. It's about a teenage boy or a young son leaving home to go follow his fortune and saying goodbye to his father. And the thing that made that song, I love the song. It's a melancholy, soulful, slow kind of song, and very, very much out of Springsteen's life in Freehold, New Jersey. I was attracted to the idea that independence meant goodbye. I'd never really equated independence with goodbye before. And that was the spark, in a way, that made that novel start for me. Just something as, ordinary as that. I thought independence just means that you took care of yourself and you made all your decisions for yourself, but it didn't mean goodbye. So for me, that's all it takes to spark a novel. That's that commotion that I talked about before. And I've told Bruce this before. I don't know if he cared, but I certainly told him.
Always struck me the thing that many authors, they have an idea of a novel and they just put it aside for 25, 30 years, and then they go back to that book and write it down. And
probably not a bad idea.
Right. You kept your manuscript for Canada in the refrigerator for how many years?
28. 28. Well, it wasn't a manuscript.
The same refrigerator?
Yeah. Well, no, different refrigerators over the course of life. But it wasn't a manuscript, Marius. It was a bunch of notes. I started it in 1987, I think, and I started it without quite knowing where it was going, and then something happened and intervened, and I didn't get to carry it forward. But I thought it was such a good idea. It started with the notion that, that this is a story about a young American boy who, for some reason or other, gets taken across the border into Canada. It was just that rudimentary, raw little piece of action. But it seemed so full of possibility. I liked it so much that I just remembered it. And in my notebook, which I got back from you, I kept, every time I would get an idea that I thought fitted into that, I would write it down. And then I would go store those notes in the refrigerator. Because my parents were from families in rural Arkansas, which is, I don't know how many of you can imagine what rural Arkansas is. Pretty rural. But they had wooden houses, and sometimes they had wood-burning stoves, and the houses burned. And if you stored your precious documents, your wills or your bonds or your stocks, whatever you happen to have, in the refrigerator, when the house burned, you could still find them. So I always put things like that in the refrigerator. I do it at home now.
I love you when I guess, I don't know if it's in between them or somewhere in your interviews, because I read a lot of them, but you say, you quote the song of Peggy Lee, "Is that all there is to a fire?" And you also the fire is quite present in your books, not just in wildlife.
Fires, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, wildlife in Rock Springs and Canada, the situations are placed in the Montana state, and
yes.
I was curious a couple of weeks ago to read some news from Montana right now, and I discovered a publication called Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks.
Yes.
And it was this news about a young black bear who had clambered into a lady's bathroom through a window in a hotel and slept in the sink for all day. Of course, they tranquilized the bear and they moved it and relocated in a forest. But
yes,
I wanted to know the story. Maybe you would write it down in your notebook.
Well,
and then give me 10%.
I'll draw the line there. You know, there are so many affecting stories about bears, and I put one of them in wildlife, and because forest fires inevitably, you know, kill a lot of creatures, and there was a story about it's in wildlife. It was just something I read someplace. I don't think I saw it. Just about a bear running up a tree, and the fire just consuming the tree, just going up the tree, and the bear being in the tree, squalling and making terrible, horrible noises. When I read that, I thought, my God, I said, I have to put that in a story someplace, just to be able to get over it, you know, just not suppress it, but put it in a story and let people understand what wildlife is all about. There's a line in one of those stories, and I guess it was in Great Falls. No, well, I don't know what story it's in. I've written too many stories. So some get left back. Wildlife means some don't survive. Some don't get to go forward. And that's really what wildlife means to me, that some get left back. It's very much like civilized life. Some get left back. It's profound and it's dark, but it's true.
You know, I was thinking the other day that God is absent from your books. I can't remember right now.
Not absent. God is not absent from my book.
I can't remember characters speaking about God.
No, no one does. He's not absent, he just isn't there. He just never arrived, or she never arrived, so he can't be absent. He would only be absent if you were looking for her, and I'm not looking for her. I mean, there's a line of the American poet Wallace Stevens, which says, "In an age of disbelief, it is for the poet or the writer to provide the satisfactions of belief in his measure and in his style." And I have tried to provide the satisfactions of belief in my measure and in my style. I mean, for me, the only religion, the only faith that I have, which is very much like the faith that's talked about in the Bible in Hebrews 2. In the Bible it says faith is the evidence of things unseen. For me, the imagination is the evidence of things unseen. So they're not very far apart, but they just don't have that paternalistic looking down upon you view that religion has. It seems to satisfy the same needs, the same hungers, to believe in something that you can't specify, to believe in something that you can create, to believe in something that will be when you make it.
Did your parents or grandparents have, I don't know, more institutional relationship with the religion?
Yes, they did. They did indeed. I was raised in the Presbyterian church. It just didn't work. It just didn't take with me. I tried really hard. But you can't make yourself. You can't just sort of, you know, it's like pinching your nose and trying to breathe. You just can't do it.
You know, last year, in your chair, John Franzen was sitting.
And one of my friends.
And I thought it might be nice to create some sort of relay between the guests of the festival from one year to another. And I wrote him an email.
You're full of tricks, aren't you?
Thank you. Hello, Richard.
I said he was my friend.
Franzen here. I'm happy to think of you on stage with the excellent Marius.
Voila.
Who has asked me for a question to ask you. One question might. What would you ask me if our position were reversed? It's tricky. It's a tricky thing, thinking up good questions. but maybe I'll ask you one about the afterlife of your work. When you and I were coming up as writers...
And he's much younger than I am, by the way. He's 20 years younger than I am, but yes, okay, we did.
When you and I were coming up as writers, we had a strong sense that literature lasted. We were passionate about work that was 100 years old, 200 years old, 2,000 years old. But now, at least in the United States, it's unusual to find a young person who reads anything at all from the 19th century. So my question is, Richard, did the thought of posterity ever matter to you? Do you think about it now?
Well, that makes me think about a lot of things. First of all, with all due respects to my very intelligent friend, Jonathan, I don't think it's true that young people don't read novels from the 19th century. I just don't think that's true. I think they do. I think they are as available as they have ever been. And there's a lot more in modern life cluttering up time. But I think that there are still young people who will read novels from the 19th century. So I don't like generalities. But the answer to his question is no. I never thought about posterity at all, and I don't think about it now. There's a line in one of Shakespeare's sonnets in which he says, "Present mirth is present laughter." I want to write books for people who are alive now, people whose lives I can actually know that I am contributing to, people who I'm giving something that will be usable in their life at present. And what I can't control is what will happen after I'm gone. And so I just don't think about it. It just isn't in my nature to project beyond the grave or to think about what will happen to my books, because I can't control it. To the extent I can control it, I try to write the best books I can write today. And that's all I know. And I would actually be really surprised if Jonathan felt very different from that. And I don't know if that's uniquely American. I assume it's not, because I don't think there is very much that's uniquely American. That's not true of Romania. It's not true of Burundi. I just would be surprised if he felt very differently about that. Because of the intensity that he applies to his work, he is a very present writer. He is a writer who commits books in the way that you commit moral acts. So I'd be surprised if he felt differently about that. But thank you, that's a generosity.
But think about a question for him. I will email it later.
Yeah, I'll think about a question for him. It might be the same question. So I'd be interested to know what he thought about it, because I can presume upon him in a way without knowing his answer, but I would be interested to know what his answer is. My colleagues never fail to surprise me, that they have attitudes about all kinds of things that I would never have imagined that they would have. I mean, I think of myself as the ultimate sort of nuts and bolts kind of bricklayer, kind of practical person. But I find in some of my colleagues, John Banville, for instance, one of my very closest friends, he's a complete romantic. He thinks nothing more than that his books will last for centuries. And I just think, my God, really? But he does, and he means it's serious. He's as serious about what he feels as I am about what I feel.
You know, the same you were thinking 30 years ago. I don't know if you remember your own introduction to this anthology back in 1990. Because you said, I stumbled upon this short fragment. Most writers I know and whose work I admire want to write something that later generation will read and be redeemed by. As my friend Barry Hanna says, to shoot for the stars in all that they write. But we all know there are no promises about that, no formulas. Adherence to the old, adherence to the new. It's impossible to know if work will last, and slightly fatuous even to wonder, since we won't last ourselves, and literature may not either, so we all hope it does. In any case, our best expectation for literature might be closer at hand, and our standards proportioned more to our immediate benefit.
So in other words, I haven't changed very much in 30 years. I mean, those generations of people that I would like to be able to write for are people that I think I will live beside. It's not generations beyond my own death. It's people who are here now, who are now 17 years old, and who in 20 years will be, 37 years old, and I might even be still around. I'm not sure I want to be, but might be.
But do you remember yesterday night we were drinking wine and discussing literature, and somehow in your voice there was some sort of sadness when you said that nobody reads or talk about Ray Kuiper's work anymore. So somehow you wanted.
Well, I mean, it's only been
to last
30 years. It's not very long. Dogs live 30 years. I thought it was sad and regrettable that a writer who made such an impact on the world, now when I'm at Columbia University, where I'm professor, I don't hear his name. It makes me sad. It makes me sorry. It would make him sad, make him sorry. But again, it's a very present feeling. Personal. It's personal with me. I want his work to be read. I want his work to last.
Before changing the topic, I have to say to the audience that if they have questions for you, they will. There's pen and paper at volunteers, so you should write it down. The questions
in the dark.
In the dark, and I will choose who you.
I write things in the dark all the time. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I don't want to turn the light on because it'll wake Christina up. So I'm in the dark writing notes down to myself in the dark. Then I read them the next morning, and it looks like it's in another language.
Staying a little bit more with John Franzen, in the beginning of September, he published a piece that in New Yorker that has become well discussed in the social media, and that piece is called "What if we stop pretending the climate apocalypse is coming? To prepare for it, we need to admit that we can't prevent it." And I want you to read a small thing from this piece. Today, this scientific evidence verges on irrefutable. If you're younger than 60, you have a good chance of witnessing the radical destabilization of life on Earth. Massive crop failures, apocalyptic fires, imploding economies, epic flooding, hundreds of millions of refugees fleeing regions made uninhabitable by extreme heat or permanent drought. If you're under 30, you're all but guaranteed to witness it. What's your take on climate change? Because, in wildlife, in your novel Wildlife, there's a fire that seems unstoppable, just like the fire in Amazon earlier this summer. Are you?
Well, my take on climate change is quite practical. In America, for instance, but it certainly affects everybody in the world. We have to get rid of these morons who don't believe in climate change. We have to try to do something. It won't be my generation. I won't see it, I don't think, unless a big fireball comes from outer space. But we have to do something not in our own interest. We have to do something in the interest of people who we'll never meet, who we'll never know, and who can enjoy this planet as we have enjoyed it. And what that means is throwing the rascals out, throwing the criminals out, throwing the bad people out. That's it. That's the only practical way I can think about it, because as Jonathan says, there's probably not a lot we can do to deflect or delay some of these things. But there are things that can be done to deflect and delay many of these things. But not if the people who are running things in America right now are running things in America.
His article was widely shared on social media.
That's why I don't know about it.
Why don't you do social media?
Because I don't have time. I don't have time.
Earlier you said you had nothing to do.
Well, but I didn't say I had nothing to do. I had nothing else to do. I have plenty to do, but I don't have time for Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all that crapola. I just don't have any time for that. I mean, why? Why? I never had it before. Why do I need it now? It's not as if anything interesting is on there.
What do you do? What do you still do when you're not writing?
Oh, Christina and I play.
Are you still going for hunting?
Yeah, we go hunting in Montana. We chase around after pheasants, and I go fishing, and I play squash. I play squash even at my advanced age, and yeah, just the normal things human beings do. Nothing very arcane or jazzy. I just do the stuff that I've always done. I like it.
Who taught you to hunt?
My grandfather and my father and my mother. They were all shotgun shooters. Yeah, they taught me to do that when I was eight years old. Yeah, in Arkansas.
Speaking of guns, a couple of years ago, you wrote an article in the Financial Times when you said that a National Rifle Association in the United States, it's a terrorist domestic organization.
It is. It's an anathema. It's a horrible.
That tacitly supports the killing of children.
Yes, they do. They think the killing of children is fine.
But
their own children, their grandchildren. They think that for Americans to murder children in grammar schools is okay.
Of course, you ask for saner gun laws.
Yes.
But yourself, you always had a gun.
Yeah.
And
but if the United States ever passed a law that said you must turn in your guns, I would be first in line. I would be first in line to turn in my guns. Yes, I would.
So
it's another one of those things you have to do for a generation beyond yourself. You can't just be always profoundly self-interested. There has to, and I'm not talking about sacrifice. It's just to do something that is in the interest of someone else. I mean, that's what writing novels is about. Writing novels is about doing something for someone you don't know, making something where before there was nothing for someone's use and betterment. So they go hand in hand, really.
And what happened? Did you get reactions to that?
No, not at all. I wrote that piece so that I would end up on the NRA's hate list, but it was so inconsequential that the NRA didn't even notice it. I was very disappointed. I saw the list one day looking feverishly for my name. I never saw it. They don't care. They couldn't care less. Maybe it was because it was in the Financial Times. It was published in Great Britain. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they think what happens in Great Britain doesn't matter.
That article was all the way bitter. You said that America seems to be more and more non-governmental, having more stupid people.
Yeah. That was before Trump. Well, long before Trump, it seemed ungovernable. I mean, we have this vast landmass, which is all divided up in this federated system, where states are not really very closely joined to other states and acting quite independently of each other. And we have this federal government, which is basically at war with this federated state. And it makes governance quite messy. It makes governance quite unsophisticated in a way.
But don't you see it all over the world? Isn't it some sort of air du temps? It's happening all over. I mean, look at what's happening right now in UK. Look at.
Well, I see it in France. I see it in France, for sure, and I see it in parts of Germany, for sure. Countries that I know probably better than I know Poland, or that I know better than I know Hungary. Yes, I do. I mean, in America, it has always been that way, but with the rise of certain kinds of leadership, it becomes more urgent. It becomes more driven. But it's leadership. I mean, I'm just an old-fashioned person. I think that leadership is everything. Good leadership spawns good leadership. Bad leadership spawns bad leadership.
Do we have some questions from the audience already? Well, back to literature. How do you see the translations of your work? What's your, I don't know, what's your expectations?
Well,
because you told me, and it was interesting to me to see, you said to me, I'm more interested in being read by Europeans or not.
yes. I mean, I had a liberal arts education in the United States, and so we read European literature and translation. And it was for me the great fantasy, the great romance to have books published in Romania, to have books published in France, to have books published in the Middle East. And so it was for me the thing that happened to my work that in a way personally meant more to me. Getting books published in the United States just seemed like square one. That if you could get your book published in the United States, then it might happen, it might follow, then the real effect of your work would branch into the rest of the world. You know, there's a line of Elizabeth Hardwick's which I love. Elizabeth Hardwick was an American short story writer and essayist who was the second wife of Robert Lowell, the poet Robert Lowell, was a great friend of mine. And she said to once, she said, it is not enough to make a living as a writer. You have to make a difference. And it seemed to me that you could make a difference as a writer if your books were published all over the world, rather than just in your own backyard. So for me, and I don't think I'm particularly typical of American writers. I think most American writers, typical of most Americans, don't look abroad very much. I always looked abroad. And I think it was because I grew up in such a unlikable place, Mississippi.
What was the first book you read? I guess it's Absalom, Absalom by Faulkner.
Yes, it was. That's the first novel I ever read. Probably one of the hardest books in American literature to read. I read it at age 19.
You said you like to live and get to the age of 100.
No, I never said that.
Okay.
Throw that away. I mean, I've seen people who live to 100. I don't want to be those people.
3 favorite writers.
Oh, God, why do
How many times did you read their books?
Why do I have to have only 3? Why can't I have 100? I don't have to have 3 favorites. I don't have the kind of mind that makes for exclusive lists. And how many times have I read? I mean, Faulkner. Okay, Faulkner, great. I read Absalom 5 times. Ford Madox Ford, the English writer. Virginia Woolf. Those are 3 favorite writers, but they're not the only 3 favorite writers that I have. I don't have to have 3. I can have 100, because there are all those wonderful books.
How do you feel about criticism? Is it helping you, or does it motivate you to change anything about your novels, or are you satisfied with your work no matter what others said?
Criticism is pointless to me.
Thank you. I am literary critic.
I know, I understand. No offense. It comes along after I finish the book. I mean, if they would come into my study and say, no, that needs to be a little better, I might pay attention to them. But it comes when the deed is done already. You know, what is it? Samuel Johnson said, I have nothing to fear or learn from censure or praise. I feel that way.
There's a question on the smallest piece of paper I've ever seen.
Probably a really good question.
If the world ends, what book would you want to save in your refrigerator?
That's not a serious question. The world is going to end, by the way. You better have more than a book in your refrigerator.
If you have to recommend from all of your books to someone who never read any...
And I don't. Read the shortest one, you know? That's what I think. Read the one that provides for you the least amount of time commitment. And if you like it, because I've made them all as good as I can make them, read the shortest one, and it'll make the, you know, if you like it, then maybe you read a long one then. Just trying to be helpful here.
Do you think, I'm going to change a bit the question. What do you think about publishing online?
I've never done it much. Well, maybe I've done it once or twice in the New Yorker once or twice.
No, publishing books online.
Oh, I don't know anything about it, and so I don't have any opinion about it. I mean, the fact that people do it is their business, and I don't have anything bad to say about it. It came along in my life late enough that I never was tempted to do it, and I think if my whole writing life just were to suddenly tomorrow fall out from under me, if my publishers here in Romania decided they didn't want to publish me anymore, I would probably not go to online publishing myself. But that doesn't have anything to do with anybody else.
Is there someone you would want to write about but couldn't?
No. I don't even understand the question.
Maybe in the way of, why didn't you ever write fictional stories about your parents or about your wife, let's say?
Well, I think I never wanted to write stories about Christina because I didn't ever want to try to draw a circle around her. When you write about a character, you kind of create the illusion that this is everything you need to know. That would be impossible with Christina, and I never thought it would be even worth trying. She's always, every time she walks into the room, I don't know what she's going to say. I don't know what she's going to think. I hope she tells me she loves me, but that's about as far as I project. And about my parents, I think my parents influenced all kinds of characters that I wrote in subliminal ways. So I probably did finally put onto pages things that my parents influenced. I know that there are female characters in some of my books that remind me of my mother. There are male characters who remind me of my father. So there.
There is a question that 3 people wrote it down, so I'm going to...
Must be a good question.
What is your biggest fear?
Oh, a long life? That's easy. Yeah, that's the truth. That's my biggest fear, a long life. Yeah. And I've already lived 75 years. Does that seem unusual to you, to fear a long life?
Yes.
Does it seem unusual?
No, not at all.
No, yeah. Well, you're a young man, and it's just never had much appeal to me.
You know, I'm so thrilled that the end of the world is coming, and I have great chances to see it.
I'm not happy about that. I would like.
No, I'm happy. I'm curious.
Well, I'm not even curious.
If you had to give your life a title, what would it be?
I don't.
That's the title?
I don't. Yeah. I don't. There's some questions you don't have to answer, right?
Well, probably the last one.
Okay.
If you could share with us a thought or an idea, something that you consider really significant to people, what thought or idea that would be?
I think I already said it. I think the best thing I know is, in fact, I've probably said a lot of the things that I care about the most, very sort of Boy Scout kind of attitudes. Love your neighbor as yourself. Trust your imagination to create a future that's livable. Believe that your life is worth using in someone else's interest. Those are the best ideas I have. They're not new. Why should I trade them in on something else?
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Marius.
You're my favorite author alive.
Oh, thank you.
And I want you...
Still here.
Yeah, and I... and I want you to live as long as I live, at least.
Ah, God, what a thought.
Yeah. Richard will sign the books for you, but only for a half an hour, and he has...
I have to have my dinner.
And he has a big favor to ask you not to take selfies or photograph him because he's...
Only because I have migraine headaches, and selfies flash in my face, and they immediately give me a headache.
If the book is signed, that's enough. You don't have to have a selfie with Richard. After this talk is over, there's a night of poetry at Casa FILIT. 60 poets will read from their work.
A cornucopia of poets.
Yeah, 60 poets.
It's wonderful.
And the night is dedicated to Emil Brumaru's memory, a great Romanian poet that died at the beginning of this year, very loved one.
I see.
So, thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming very much.
And see you tomorrow on the same stage without others. Thank you, Richard.
Așa cum a spus Marius, de la ora 22:30, noaptea albă a poeziei. Mulțumim pentru traducere, mulțumim pentru prezență. Moderatorii de la Casa FILIT în această seară sunt Vlad Tăușance, Răzvan Țupa și Radu Vancu. Vă mulțumim, noapte bună și cu poezie frumoasă!